There's something about a full moon that unsettles the human mind. Some say it brings out the madness in people. But in Texarkana, the full moon didn't just make people act strange, it turned the night into a killing ground. In the spring of 1946, as the full moon lit up the quiet streets of a southern town, a faceless killer emerged from the shadows. He didn't steal, he didn't speak, he only killed, and then disappeared like smoke under silver moonlight. Texarkana was a town split in two, half in Texas, half in Arkansas. It was a place where a street could mean crossing into another state, a place with two police departments, two sets of laws, and double the confusion when something went wrong. In 1946, it was home to around 20,000 people. Most were working class, employed by the railroad, the munitions plant, or local farms. After World War II, the town was slowly returning to normal. Young men were back, couples were getting married, families were rebuilding. Then came February 22. That night, 25-year-old Jimmy Hollis and his 19-year-old girlfriend, Mary Jean Larry, parked on a quiet stretch of Richmond Road. It was a place young couples went when they wanted privacy. Around 11:55 p.m., their night was interrupted. A man appeared. He wore dark clothes. On his face was a white mask, cut from a pillowcase, with holes for eyes. He held a flashlight and a pistol. He ordered them both out of the car. Jimmy hesitated, trying to reason with him. The man struck him with the pistol so hard it cracked his skull. Mary screamed. The man dragged her into a ditch and assaulted her. Then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he vanished into the dark. Jimmy spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Mary survived, shaken and bloodied. Neither could give a clear description, only the memory of the mask and the calm, cold voice behind it. Police treated it as an isolated attack, a one-time madman, maybe someone drunk or unhinged. They were wrong. 3 weeks later, on the morning of March 24th, a passing motorist found a car pulled off a dirt road near Highway 67. Inside were the bodies of Richard Griffin, 29, and Polly Ann Moore, 17. Richard sat between the front seats, slumped over, a bullet wound in the back of his head. Polly had been pulled from the car, murdered, and then placed back inside. Her clothes were disheveled. There were no signs of robbery. Her purse was untouched. It was a clean, controlled scene. The killer had left no fingerprints, no tire tracks, no bullet casings, and no motive. This time, there were no survivors. Texarkana changed overnight. Fear crept in through every window and under every door. Young couples canceled dates. Parents forbade their children from going out after dark. Gun sales skyrocketed. The word phantom began to spread through whispers. But the killer wasn't done. On April 14th, 16-year-old Paul Martin picked up his friend, 15-year-old Betty Jo Booker, after her late-night jazz performance at the VFW Club. Paul was supposed to take her home. They never made it. The next morning, Paul's body was discovered on the side of North Park Road. He had been shot 4 times, once through the nose, once in the ribs, once in the hand, and once in the back of the neck. His car was found miles away, abandoned. Hours later, searchers found Betty Jo's body in the woods near Spring Lake Park. She had been shot twice, once through the chest, once in the face. She was still wearing her performance outfit. Her saxophone case lay nearby, unopened. Again, there were no signs of struggle, no attempt to hide the bodies, no evidence left behind. Just like the others, the murders had taken place under a bright, almost full moon. By now, the town was in full panic. Curtains were drawn, windows were nailed shut. Hardware stores ran out of locks and floodlights. People sat on their porches with shotguns across their laps. The killer had no pattern, except the time of night, the rural locations, and the moonlight. The victims were always couples, always out alone, always late, and always found by sunrise. The press began calling him the Phantom Killer. Texarkana, once a quiet town at the edge of two states, had become the hunting ground for a ghost. People whispered that he could be anyone, a neighbor, a policeman, a returned soldier. They said he only struck when the moon was full. They said he watched his victims first, waited in the trees. And they were right to be afraid, because the phantom wasn't finished. On May 3, 1946, the killer struck again. But this time, it wasn't a young couple in a parked car. It wasn't an isolated dirt road under the stars. This time, it was inside someone's home. Virgil Starks was a 37-year-old farmer, well-liked and quiet. He lived with his wife Katie in a modest farmhouse just outside Texarkana on the Arkansas side. That evening, around 9 p.m., Virgil sat in his armchair, reading the newspaper. Katie had just begun to get ready for bed. The house was calm, peaceful. Then, a shot. Through the window, a bullet pierced the glass and struck Virgil in the back of the head. He stood up, staggered, then collapsed, blood soaking into the upholstery. Katie rushed from the bedroom, saw her husband lying on the floor, and ran to the phone to call the police. A second shot rang out. The bullet struck her in the face, shattering her jaw. She didn't stop. Bleeding heavily, half her face destroyed, Katie ran barefoot out the back door, through the dark fields, across 200 yards to a neighbor's house. Her nightgown was drenched in blood. She collapsed on their porch. She lived. But Virgil Starks did not. By the time officers arrived at the farmhouse, the killer was gone. He had left no evidence, no footprints, no weapon, no motive. And just like before, the night had been bright with moonlight. This wasn't random anymore. This was methodical, planned. A predator who now wasn't just hunting couples, but was bold enough to strike inside a man's home. The town erupted. If people had been afraid before, now they were paranoid. Some fled Texarkana altogether. Others transformed their homes into fortresses. Curtains were nailed shut, doors were barricaded. Families slept in shifts. Men sat up all night with loaded rifles pointed at the front door. Women kept kitchen knives under their pillows. Children were taught to hide under beds at the sound of gunfire. Police began patrolling neighborhoods. Volunteers with shotguns set up watch groups. Teenagers who once cruised the streets on Friday nights now sat silently inside. Hardware stores couldn't keep up with demand. They ran out of locks, bolts, chains, and window bars. Gun shops sold out of ammunition within days. The press kept the pressure on. Headlines screamed, "Phantom killer strikes again. No one's safe. Murder in the dark. Who is the masked terror of Texarkana?" The fear was real, but answers were not. Law enforcement was overwhelmed. The case crossed jurisdictions. Texas Rangers investigated on one side, Arkansas police on the other. The FBI came in but clashed with local officers. Information was scattered. Coordination was weak. Hundreds of leads came in. Dozens were questioned. No one was arrested. One suspect stood out, Ewell Swinney, a local car thief with a long record. His wife briefly confessed that he had killed those people, but then recanted. Under the law at the time, a wife couldn't be forced to testify against her husband. There was no forensic evidence linking him to the crimes. He was jailed for car theft, spending over 20 years in prison. During that time, the killings stopped. But he was never charged with murder. Other suspects came and went. A war veteran with PTSD, a recluse who lived in the woods, a traveling salesman who moved town to town. None stuck. And all the while, the people whispered the same thing. He only kills during a full moon. He watches you first. He doesn't want money. He just wants to kill. Children grew up afraid of the dark. Teenagers dared each other to drive down lonely back roads. Families stayed home on weekends. Even after the violence stopped, the fear lingered. like cigarette smoke that clings to a room long after the fire is gone. The phantom had vanished, but no one in Texarkana believed he was gone. After the murder of Virgil Starks, the phantom disappeared. No more bodies were found, no more gunshots in the dark, no more victims left behind on blood-soaked ground, just silence. But that silence wasn't peace. Texarkana didn't exhale, it held its breath. The town was frozen in suspense, waiting for the next scream, the next news headline, the next shadow to move wrong under the silver moonlight. But months passed, then years. The killings never resumed. The phantom had vanished without a trace. And just like that, the nightmare ended. But the questions didn't. Who was the phantom killer? That's the question that's haunted Texarkana for nearly 80 years. Police followed thousands of leads. Dozens of suspects were interrogated. Entire files were compiled, thick with statements, sketches, maps, and dead ends. Yet no one was ever convicted. No one even stood trial. Only theories remain. Theory 1, the repeat offender, U.L. Swinney. U.L. Swinney was a 29-year-old car thief with a long criminal record. He was arrested shortly after the final murder for stealing a vehicle. His wife, Peggy, gave police a shocking confession. She claimed Swinney was the phantom killer. She said he had driven her to the crime scenes. She described details never released to the public. But then she changed her story. And under the law, a spouse could not be forced to testify against her husband. Without her cooperation, prosecutors had nothing. Swinney went to prison for car theft, but was never charged with murder. Still, many investigators believed he was the killer, especially since the murders stopped after he was locked up. He died in 1994, taking whatever secrets he had to the grave. Theory 2, the soldier with shadows in his mind. Another theory pointed to a returned World War II veteran, someone trained to kill, someone who had seen horrors overseas and couldn't escape them. The murders were fast, silent, efficient. The phantom left no traces, no prints, no witnesses, no signature beyond cold brutality. He struck like a soldier on a mission, clean, ruthless, purposeful. But the theory never identified a specific man. No name, no arrest, just a psychological profile and a chilling possibility. Theory 3, a drifter who came and went with the moon. Some believed the phantom wasn't from Texarkana at all, that he was a traveler, someone who drifted into town under cover of night, fed on fear, and moved on. Similar unsolved cases involving couples in cars popped up across the South around that time, all with eerie similarities: night attacks, .32 caliber bullets, no motive, no robbery. Was the phantom part of a larger pattern? A ghost on wheels? A man with no home, only victims? We'll never know. From true crime to legend. In 1976, the story of the phantom was adapted into a horror film, The Town That Dreaded Sundown. It dramatized the events, mixing fact with fiction. The phantom wore a white sack over his face and killed in brutal theatrical ways. For some, the film was a way to process trauma. For others, especially survivors and family members, it felt like exploitation. But the legend grew. And today, the town still hosts outdoor screenings of the movie every October. Ironically, not under a full moon, but close enough. It's become part of Texarkana's identity, half memory, half myth. But yet, the fear lingers. What makes the phantom killer so terrifying isn't just the violence, it's the unknown. He didn't kill for money, he didn't speak, he didn't seek fame or leave riddles. He didn't want to be caught, and he never was. No prints, no taunts, no signature, only death and moonlight. Most serial killers want credit. They want the world to know what they've done. They write letters to the press, they leave behind clues, they craft legacies of horror. But not the phantom. He came, he killed, he disappeared. And in a strange way, that's what makes him unforgettable. Because some monsters don't need names, they don't need motives. They just wait for the right night, when the town is still, when the shadows stretch long, when the full moon rises. To this day, the Phantom Killer remains one of America's most chilling unsolved mysteries. What do you think really happened in Texarkana? Was the killer a local, a drifter? Did he die, or simply move on to another town? Let us know your theories in the comments below. And if this story sent a chill down your spine, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more true crime stories that history tried to forget. Here on The Hidden File, we bring the shadows into the light, one unsolved mystery at a time.